Chris, just to fall flat at the start like that? Just what did you see from the group there that led to such?
Then we missed a bunch of shots early. Jaden had some good looks. Mike had some good looks. They didn't go down. They led the runouts, and then we started trying to force it all, individually, one-on-one, and I think we had, a bunch of turnovers in that next phase of the first quarter, and that obviously got the crowd into it, them going, and then we just struggled to find a rhythm. Everyone was kind of trying to do it all by themselves. We lost our connectivity, but all credit to the Thunder. They certainly deserved this. They played outstanding, and we came up short in a lot of ways. So
to lose this decisively, is there just a kind of a level of disappointment in a moment this big to kind of answer that?
I mean, if you lose, you lose, John. Like all losses are disappointment for us. So yeah. So.
Chris, obviously you gave credit to the Thunder, but the games you played here were far different than the games you played at home.
Yeah.
Like, as you look at that group, they're young, they're in your same conference.
Sure.
And they could be there for years to come.
Sure.
How do you view them as an obstacle moving forward for your group?
Well, obviously, the outstanding team, well built, super deep. They got an identity and a style of play that suits them. They got a bunch of young players, and it looks very, very promising. But one thing we've learned about the league, it looked promising for Boston a year ago. It looked promising for Milwaukee for a few years. Like, the league is so hard right now. Obviously health factors into it. Roster construction, being able to afford the tax, all these things come into play at some point. That's why, you got to go for it now. You really do. Whenever you're in the moment, you got to go for it right now. And, these guys are well positioned to do that.
Coach, 2 questions. One, what do you think Ant learned from this series that he'll take moving forward? And 2, it certainly hurts everybody, but Mike Conley sitting at almost 40 years old, his third opportunity, didn't get it. I don't know if you saw his emotions or how he felt.
So Mike is super upset, but the key. I'll start with that part of the question. Nobody. I think we all wanted to go as far and win it all for Mike Conley, if not for anybody else in our locker room. Is what he's meant to us, what he. Who he is as a person. We still have him next year, and the key to these things right now in the league is trying to get here as many times as possible. We just talked about the parity in the league, so the key is get there as many times, and it's very hard to do, but Mike is sometimes, maybe not. Maybe Mike. Maybe it works out for Mike in a different way. Maybe he wins one as a coach. Maybe he wins one as a general manager. There's a lot of things that can happen for you in your future, but we're going to keep battling for him and for the organization. What did Ant learn? I think obviously, he's got to, learn to play against that physicality and that type of kind of holding all the time. I think, they made it really hard for him. I thought for a lot of the series he did make the right play, and, we preach that to him all the time. Yeah, we need him to be aggressive for sure. He's got to find some easier buckets. I got to help him do that. I think we were never able to establish something consistent with him, and that's on us as much as anybody. So,
Chris, just over the course of the series against this opponent, just how close to
I'm sorry, I can't hear
how close to perfect did you have to try to play against these guys, given what they could do to you in a short stretch of time?
No, you're never going to play perfect, so we don't even set out to kind of play that way. It's pretty simple, right? They've beaten us more than we've beaten them this season, but every single time they've beaten us, we've had 18 to 20 plus turnovers. Every time we've beaten them, we've had 10 to 12. It starts there, and that gives you a chance. That gives you the best chance. And again, we turned it over at 21 times tonight, so.
what did you just see in terms of the turnovers? Like, I know you thought that it was sometimes in the Golden State series more of a product of losing focus
Yeah.
late in games, but there were high turnover performances, and so were these. Like, why do you think that kind of reared its head?
Yeah,
late
we
in the
just
season?
kind of we didn't reverse the ball well enough. I mean, there was a crowd on one side of the floor, and when we would throw the ball away from the crowd, we'd come right back into the crowd. And they're super handsy and physical, and they just were taking it from us in those spaces. We had to get the ball to the other side of the floor, and we just didn't do that consistently well. The initial drive has to be to pass. And a lot of times these guys were just trying to score off of those drives, and those plays were never really going to be there. So,
Chris, I remember you said at the beginning of the season when it started slow, it was going to take a while for the cake to bake with this team, and it did, and obviously not the end result that were hoping for this season. But reflecting, I know it's right now, but kind of reflecting on that process and that challenge and the accomplishment of it, what goes through your head?
I mean, I was just very proud of the guys. It was definitely a challenging season in a lot of ways. They stuck with it. They stuck with each other. They stuck with me. It wasn't always pretty, but we played our best basketball when it mattered, which was down the stretch. We found some things that we could repeat, and it was. I remember having a conversation with Anthony, mid-season. I said, "What do you think? What do you think a good season feels like? What do you think that looks like for us right now? Like, how do you?" And he said, "Let's get into the playoffs, win a round, and see where we go." And it was exactly my thought at the time too. I felt like if we can get into the playoffs and win a round, there's no reason we couldn't go farther. And at the time, we were not a very fully formed team. Like, we had a lot of struggles right at that point in time, but that was the goal. And guys kind of shifted their emphasis, and so I got to be proud of that. I mean, at this point in time, you want to go further, but we got to try to lay a foundation where we can keep learning. So.
Is there anything roster-wise you think you need against a defense like that to kind of continue to complement Ant? It felt like a lot of times he was the only one who could really break down off the bounce, especially tonight.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think the league is, the more handlers you have, I think it's especially with all the switching and with these guys with their gaps and stuff like that. You got to have guys who can go somewhere, break the paint, make the play. I'm excited. We got a lot of good young players on our roster here that didn't necessarily get the run that maybe they should have this season. But, I really like where we are, and I'm sure our front office will do a great job in the offseason and the draft because they always do.
Just reflecting on the 26-5 run you had leading up to the conference finals, that group and that cohesion and momentum that you put together, do you feel like that's replicable realistically going into next year in terms of this is going to be what our core looks like?
I do think it's replicable. I do think next season, is going to be extremely hard in the West. I mean, even harder than this year. I mean, there might not be teams in a quote-unquote rebuilding phase next year. They might have 15 teams going for it next year. Like a great season in the West for some teams might be 42-40. I mean, that's insane if you think about it. And but I do think we've found some stuff that we can repeat and that can be part of who we are. I think, we definitely need to lengthen the rotation. We got some young guys who are itching to play and I know can help us. We saw it from Jalen and we certainly saw it from TJ here. I'm pretty excited about that. So.
Yeah, you talked about how hard the West is, and you talked about bites of the apple before, and like you said, sustained success is almost impossible in this conference.
Yeah.
Does that make these moments hurt more when you get to the doorstep twice? And obviously you have a young team, a young core, and it figures to have chances to get back here, but just knowing how difficult the road is.
Yeah. No, I mean, this hurts because you're competitive. It doesn't. I don't think there's any larger perspective that we won't ever get back. I don't assume that we will. You got to put the work in. We were beat by the better team. So, you fight and you fight and you fight, but they played better, they're better. And so at that point in time, I'm not one of these guys who takes losses, into the summer with me. We'll learn and we'll regroup, but, the better team won this series. And, I'm proud of our guys and our organization for getting here. So,
Chris, Rudy during the regular season. Maybe not. You're probably in the play-in or below that without the production and consistency that he gave you during the regular season. It was a little bit shorter minutes and stuff in the postseason. When you think about his impact on this team over the course of the season, do you distinguish between the playoffs and the regular season and what he was able to do for you?
Not really. I mean, we know going into the playoffs, it's can be matchup based, it can be style based, it could be like you're just chasing certain things out there or whatnot. I mean, Rudy has been great for us. He's been great since he's gotten here. I think by his own admission, he returned to form as the season went along. He didn't have the same start that he had at the end, and that can be said for a lot of our guys and our team in general, as we just talked about. So, and Rudy's mature. He's at a point right now in his career where he understands these things, and of course he's fiercely competitive and he wants to play all the minutes all the time. And when we were just down, and so much of this series was us trying to find consistent offense, and the way they were matching up and stuff like that. We got to do a better job of maximizing him as an offensive player in the little ways that we can and have done in the past. This year was not a good job by us in that capacity. So, that's one thing I would say for Rudy, where I know he does get frustrated. We got to find him. He is open, and we got to find him. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.